so what is making this build come together? What's our crux? It's going to be this perk right here, Tail of the Comet. You get a 30% chance to proc a Cryo Dot on any ordnance damage that you do. That lasts for 4 seconds, and this can go up over 100% if you get a 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 class mod for this. I just haven't been lucky enough to get one, so I'm stuck at 72% damage. But the same class mod that boosts that also boosts Ancient Ways, which boosts your cryo damage, which feeds back into Tail of the Comet. So for our weapons that are doing a high single instance of damage, we can get some incredible cryo ticks that follow, and it doesn't matter if they resist cryo, as long as you're matching the element of the base damage, you will proc a cryo dot of 70 to over 100% damage dealt, and you're really starting to snowball your damage. So let's take a look at the full skill tree. Scorch Kairos gives us bonus mag size and ordnance damage. This one's really huge, Battleborn. At total, it gives us 40% gun damage, and due to a specializations that we have, we get a 1.5 multiplier on that, so that 40% then becomes 60%, which is massive, towards our ordnance damage. Ancient Ways, I got lucky and got a 5 out of 5 here. I'd prefer that in Tail of the Comet, but this is really nice. We go 5 out of 5 for Icy Rage. Killing an enemy with cryo damage or status effect of cryo, Tail of the Comet, boosts our gun damage, which then boosts our ordnance damage, so it's kind of a self-feeding loop. We put 3 out of 5 in Primal Surge just for a bit of ammo restoration, and if we run a different class mod, it'll boost this, so really comfy for mobbing. And then Age of Ice is a huge, huge skill. It gives us just a flat 30% damage against bosses, and so we're going to really proc some incredible cryo dots with Tail of the Comet. And then we got 1 point in Blackout for some bonus critical hit chance. And the Shock Dot, even though it's 21%, you mix that with the Cryo Dot, you mix that with some of the fire damage that we have, I'll show you in a second, we start getting like a multi-proc Cryo, Shock, Fire Dot that will melt any health bar that you find. I had been running Scourge just for some amp damage if we shoot through the firewall, and this gives us 20%. Let's see, if we run Cryonic Thrum, this gives us plus 35% cryo damage dealt, but I wanted to have some diversity, and so I started running Onslaughter, because this gives us 25% incendiary damage, plus 30% move speed, and so this is just really enough damage for everything that we need, and then we kind of diversify the elements that we're playing into. So that plus the movement speed, when we hold an ordnance, we're slower, it helps to kind of mitigate that. And then our points in the red tree, we don't go down to Berserk. We don't go down to there is only red. We don't need these points, and I don't see any AMON builds that avoid these 2 perks, so I feel like this is kind of unique. 3 out of 3 Impetus, movement speed. It's really all we want there. A heavy plate to move down the tree. Wield the Storm, status effect damage and duration. This was recently buffed with the latest patch. Now our Tail of the Comet gets a 35% additional duration and 35% additional status damage. Huge. And then when we apply a status effect, which we do with Tail of the Comet, we gain increased gun damage, 1.5 multiplier towards our ordnance damage. What's really nice is that cryo dots can infinitely stack, so you don't have to wait for one to end before another ticks, so we can proc multiple Tails of the Comet if we're using like multi-hit weapons or things that apply like shock status effects, and we'll cover those weapons in a second. But that's it. That's the whole skill tree. If we look at the specializations, I run a kind of a unique setup. Contamination is something that I don't see anybody run. If we get a critical hit, we gain bonus chance to proc status effects for 10 seconds, and we hit critical hits all the time due to our skills allowing us to critically hit. And so we're going to keep this maxed out, and you're guaranteed status effects. So we're guaranteeing gun status effects, and I think it also plays into Tail of the Comet, which is really cool. This here, pretty standard, the best defense whenever we're at max health or max shields, 30% damage. Full Spectrum Arsenal allows us to convert our gun damage into ordnance damage for that 1.5 times multiplier. And then Fragmentation Payload allows us to do more critical hits and boosts the critical hit damage. So let's talk about the weapons that we use here. When it comes to our rep kit, I like to run the Kill Spring for mobbing. Anytime we're killing something, it keeps our Super Soldier up just because of the lifesteal. Super nice. If you want to hit those huge boss numbers, I use an amp kit with Enrage. So we're hitting huge base damage and a 30% chance to proc that massive cryo dot. For our ordnance, I really like the triple barrel shrapnel launchers. One-shotting or two-shotting these is enough to one-shot most things in the game. If you load up the full charge, you can just full volley a boss, and they'll melt as you saw in the clips. The explosive let-off ordnances are really, really fun. With the splash damage on it, you'll smoke all of the vile enemies in the game. It's really no contest. You can even play around with like grenades as well. You don't have to use heavy weapon ordnances. Um, you saw the beam weapon here, the Ripper ordnance. It just kind of puts out some stupid damage, and there's variants to this that you can run. Streamer's really fun for stationary bosses. Disc Jockey, you just spray it and you don't have to worry about it, especially with a Super Soldier. Everything around you dies, and everything just gets an insane cryo dot because this has a pretty high base damage to it. And then the Bottled Lightning, if you want to do shock and cryo, this is super huge. The shock dots that we proc on this are massive, 6,200 a second. That's huge. And then the Maliwan launchers are really, really cool. So these are the single shot ones that I use. This has an 18,000 base damage. If you hit something with a shield and get that Tail of the Comet proc, it's going to be a massive, massive dot. The biggest one that I've gotten up to is over 500,000 cryo dot. And then I also have a cryo one as well. So those are really fun. For our class mods, an Icebringer is best in slot because it can boost Tail of the Comet. It's just unfortunate that mine currently only has +1, but I did get the +5 in the cryo damage. And I've got damage dealt and ordnance damage. I prefer damage dealt, gun damage, ordnance damage, or move speed, but this isn't too bad, and this has been getting it done for me, but you could squeeze out some more damage with a better class mod. This is for bossing. For mobbing, I like to use a Cyborg because it boosts your ammo regen and your shield regen. And this one's got gun damage and movement speed and damage reduction, so super comfortable for mobbing. You could use it for bossing, but it's really just mainly so that you can regen your ammo quicker and you don't have to worry about hitting your shots. And then for shields, Super Soldier, just keeping your ammo regen up. And then for bossing, run an amp shield. And then your manufacturer on your enhancement, it really doesn't matter. You're just looking for the passives to be gun damage and gun splash damage and gun critical damage. I got lucky with this roll. For our firmware, I've got preferably just 2 out of 3 in Gadget Ahoy and 2 out of 2 in Airstrike, and that's really all you need. And that's going to cover it. If you think of anything that might add to this build, put it in the comments, let me know. But yeah, I think it's kind of unique. We don't run any points past Bulletstorm, so we're not getting Berserk, we're not getting There Is Only Red, no Green Tree, and this is mainly just a Blue Tree AMON. And it's really cool that you can just proc these massive cryo dots. If anybody has a +5, so you can get 10 out of 10 in Tail of the Comet, please run some tests and show me what you can do as far as those status procs. Like I said, I'm capped out right now at about 500,000, but I think it can get squeezed way, way higher, especially if this is, doing 2 to 120% of damage dealt over 4 seconds. Pretty massive. Anyway, thanks for watching.